Welcome to the in-between,
where shift happens,
the moment between where we are
and where we are going.
We will ask all the questions,
maybe find some answers,
and generally work at being okay.
The mystery of the in-between.
And today's episode is maybe a little different than usual, but today we're kind of just doing a check-in because I think we could all use a check-in. And regardless of when you're listening to this, I think it's always something we could all benefit from. Just a moment to kind of pause and just see, like, where are we at? What's going on? How are you?
Easy question.
Yeah, just nice and light conversation. So we're actually going to borrow a question today from another podcast. And so if you are tuning in for the first time or just need a reminder, the way this podcast works is we agree, the two of us, Ryan and I, agree on a topic, and then one of us comes with questions, and we get to basically throw the other one into the in-between, that area where shift happens, and we are potentially uncomfortable working our way through whatever is going on. So today I think we're actually going to both be in the in-between, kind of in that questioning, curious space, because I actually don't know what the follow-up questions are going to be, because I don't know where we're going to go with this first question. But the question that we're going to start with is borrowed. We picked it up from a different podcast that asked the same kind of question, and it just seems like it was such a great question, a great response, and opened up for a lot of conversation. And that is, so where are we? And I think it could go in a lot of different ways, but like, where are we today? Where are you today? Where are
we today?
Maybe where have we come? Where are we going? Like, what is up? Where are we?
Well, there's lots of places we could go, but I think I'll go two places, like one from like an individual standpoint, and then one from a collective standpoint. I think let's go with the individual first. I think, individually, I'm in. Where am I? I would love to say that I am in the throes of curiosity, open to all that is possible. And I think that's where I would like to be. So I'm in this, where am I, is I am trying to lean more into curiosity. I think that for me, a lot of times I can get myself worked up when I see a situation or interaction, and then I'm going to like respond to it in this way, and these are my talking points, and I'm going to be da, right? When I talk to this person next, or when this thing happens next, this is the things I'm going to do, and whatever, and I already have it planned out. And then I'm realizing now at that moment, I'm cutting off anything that's possible and only allowing what I think should be possible in that moment. And so it really kind of dampers curiosity. And that's not to say that we don't have frameworks and things in which we operate from, because I think that's important too, to have that centeredness and groundedness. But I think sometimes we can get too attached to one particular outcome, no matter what it is, that we really don't see all the things that are around us. And so right now, where I'm at is trying to remember that more often, and trying to maximize my impact to those around me in a way that is supportive of them and supportive of all of us.
Yeah, I totally get that idea. Like, and for me, it's kind of like, God, I really hope they don't respond in this way. And so how can we approach this situation to avoid an undesirable outcome or whatever? I get that.
Well, and I think where are we collectively? I think we're in that same space. I really do. I think we're in that same space of needing to lean in more to curiosity, depending less on, well, when I see that person next to her, having these kind of rote responses that are so ingrained in, maybe past underlying beliefs, past hurts, past fears, all those things, which, I mean, those things happen, but I think being aware of their impact on how we show up collectively. So I think that collectively we're in that space of needing to, and I think trying to lean into curiosity, especially when the things that we see are like, what the hell is happening? Right. And so
Mhm.
I think that it's really easy to create stories around things or whatever instead of really leaning into the curiosity that could be brought up with that question, like, what the hell is happening? Like, what is behind this? What is underneath this? What is my part to play in this? What part have I played in this? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. That's what it just feels like. The precipice of something. I don't know what that something is.
Of something, yes. Something. Yeah, I wonder how much of this is really also a need for boundaries. And I'm
Mm,
thinking collectively, like
mhm.
I think we, as culturally have typically avoided, I don't know what I would call like real conversations. Um and probably for some of the reasons we just kind of mentioned, like, if I think I know how someone's gonna react, if I think that I know, like I know how they're gonna react to this, I know who they are, I know how they're gonna be, I know how
Yeah.
they're gonna show up, and they're gonna do X, Y, and Z. And I'd really like to avoid a blow up this time, but I need to talk to them about such and such.
Mhm.
For me, I know in the past scenarios that has been at times I've avoided it or it's been uncomfortable because really, like, I haven't had the boundary or trusted myself to stick to my boundaries in a way that knows how or when to get out of that conversation, or how to be in that conversation in a way that feels okay or feels good for me, and still say the things that need to be said. And I wonder if that's just a matter of, like, culturally we don't have those collective skills yet. We've just outright avoided building those skills for quite a long time.
Or the
Um,
awareness of the need of them, I think. I don't know.
well, yeah, that's true too, right? Not even being aware we need them. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. But I think that whole, like, I know this other person, or I know this group, and I know who they are, how they're going to be, and yeah, what more of a closed off mindset is there than that? Which would be a huge, limiter to curiosity for sure. Yeah. Hmm. How different would it be if we could? If I, how different would it be if I could stay in that curiosity thing instead of being like, oh, yeah, they're just gonna blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So what do we do? How do we change that? How do we shift that? Like, if that's where we are, I don't know what's next. Like, how do we actually?
Well, that is the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? You know, I think it's just sitting in the discomfort of that sometimes, right?
Hmm,
Well, maybe even sitting in the discomfort of our own realization of, wow, I have actually done that. I have been working on assumptions for so long. And I think that there's a lot of safety in assumptions because otherwise we wouldn't do it, right? I mean,
right.
otherwise we wouldn't act from that. So I think it is a self
Yeah.
preservation sort of thing. But I think that it is going to take a collective willingness to step out of the assumptions and lean into.
Hmm.
Because I think, when we can look back or we can stay kind of removed from a situation or from individuals or from groups, then we can operate from assumptions and yeah, whatever, whatever. But once we begin to like set that aside and then make a determination that we're going to lean into those individuals, lean into those groups of people, lean into those experiences, um, then we're going to see that, oh, wait, things aren't the way I thought they were. And that can be a little unsettling, right? Because
Yeah.
if we've been operating or believing a certain thing, I mean, just think about like if you have the certain idea of a person and then you gain a little bit more knowledge and you're like, oh, wow, I had no idea, right? It's that kind of like, oh, wait a second, recalibrate. I need to like kind of shift my perspectives, I think that it's going to take a willingness to do that. And it's going to take a willingness to then look at, okay, it's more than just shifting my perspective. I have to now shift, the ways I show up, the things I buy, like all sorts of things. And I think sometimes that is the challenge because it seems so insurmountable, or it seems so like if we do that, then it'll just fracture everything that we know to be true. And I think I think it'll take a willingness to sit in the discomfort of that, oh, wait, moment, recalibrate, and then step in to realize, oh, wait, we're not going to be crushed. Like who we are is not going to be fractured. It's going to actually be more expansive because we're going to include something we didn't know, or an experience, or an interaction, or an opportunity. Easy stuff. Easy stuff.
Right. Let's just, oh yeah, cool, I got it. Let's go.
I wish it was that easy.
Well, and I think it's tricky too because for whatever reason, I think culturally for the longest time, a lot of people were just taught to kind of be doormats. Like don't ruffle any feathers, don't rock the boat, don't bump up against anybody's rough edges. Like don't make anybody feel or think anything. Just kind of stay out of the way.
Yeah, and it wasn't explicitly said, I don't think. I think this is just this kind of melting of how we've existed. Yeah.
Right. And so that I think has led to a lot of people staying in a lot of situations and relationships and places where they've been not treated well. You've been mistreated, but we kind of stay there and don't really do what's good for ourselves or whatever. And I think others, there's a whole spectrum of maybe not knowing you're mistreating people all the way through, definitely knowing you're mistreating people and then also not caring. Because maybe I'm thinking because we haven't really had the spaces to talk about or recognize our impact on other people. It's kind of back to that rugged individual blinders on thing. But I think more recently, I've been hearing a lot more conversations about, being more aware of how we are in a relationship, how we're being treated, how someone else is showing up. And so there is this idea of like, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. And so if they act a certain way and it is abusive, it is damaging, it is mistreating you, to not be surprised if that continues happening, right? So if it happens a couple of times or keeps happening, trust that person is who they're telling you they are. And also, how do we remain curious, right? So it's like, we're not the doormat. We have to trust, there are patterns, people are predictable, and also remaining curious at the same time and not assuming that we know that people are going to show up the same exact way every time. And so that's a really tricky thing. Like, how do we build the skill set or the intuition or whatever it is to kind of navigate that, so we know who we are enough to not be the doormat. We understand the relationships that we're in well enough, but also find that place in the middle to be curious, where we're not closing off the opportunity for people to show up differently. And I think part of that is like, if someone is an abusive person, like, it's okay to, put up boundaries and cut ties and relationships and get out of there, and gracefully and carefully, maneuver our future relationships to not be blinded to that possibility of that happening again, and also to not assume that everyone else is going to do that. I think is a really tricky thing.
Well, and I think too, it's this understanding that we understand that we have the ability to change and move and shift and grow. And so being able to apply that same understanding to others, right? It's
Yeah.
interesting. Like we oftentimes we don't want to be in a box or categorize or all the things that we don't want for our own experience, but yet we're very oftentimes it can be really easy to impose those on other folks. So it's like this boundaries are both ways, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so just I think understanding, I think just trying to lean more into this kind of collective understanding that everyone's doing the best they can. We all want basically the same things, for our lives, right? And they may show up differently, but those fundamental needs, and to begin to just explore and lean into that as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think I mentioned it last podcast. I'm gonna mention it again because it's applicable. Richard Rohr talked about how he asked the question, what must it be like for the divine to express as that person? What must it be like for the divine to express as me? And like it really does shift uh, how we think about things. Because like, oh yeah, oops, I forgot that person also, right? That person I disagree with, that person that fill in the blank. It's very interesting. It does shift our perspective, but it takes a willingness to look. And I think that sometimes can be the challenge is, I mean, it's challenging when we're trying to navigate our own lives, doing the best we can, navigating whatever life experiences or whatever sorts of things are serving as barriers to our expression. It can be hard to do that, but I think it does just take this kind of simple practice of beginning to see others in that way. And I think that does shift our ability to continue to be curious.
Yeah.
Because then we're always kind of develop this curiosity habit.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting too how like being able to see others through the lens of curiosity also requires us at least some level of our own like inner journey, our own work, our own self-awareness. Like I have to be willing enough to look at me in order to be willing to look at others.
Yeah.
So I have to look at me differently, maybe to look at others differently. And it is interesting how the world around us can kind of become our mirror in a certain way of like, if I'm willing to look inward and, with lots of grace and patience and like gentleness, we're not looking to like uproot everything all at once or shame and blame ourselves into self-reflection,
Right.
But just to kind of take that first baby step or the next step or whatever a little deeper into our own awareness, our own self-awareness. Because how do I see, like, how do I see the divine? How do I see that thing in someone else? Seeing it in them can point it towards seeing it in me, and seeing it in me can kind of point back towards seeing it in other people. But there is this like interconnection at play that at some point we really can't separate ourselves from the world around us, which I think is like a huge culture shock to the Western mentality, right?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking a lot of recently about something we talked about. I don't know. Oh, I'm sure we talked about it over and over again, but I think it first started coming up a couple years ago for us of like this idea that in modern society we have each been asked to recreate in our own mind that which throughout history has been required of an entire village or an entire town or
Yeah.
entire you know tribe or whatever, like a whole community of people have taken on the responsibility that now each one of us is being asked to take on in our own psyche, which when it's framed that way seems just kind of it's just insane.
Yeah.
And yet it's so ingrained, I think, in the culture. It can make it really challenging to navigate finding your way out of that. And, having spent 2 or 3 years in this conversation, probably longer without necessarily realizing that was the conversation we were having yet, it can be really challenging once you start.
Oh, yeah.
And I know there's a meme or several versions of this meme going around. Are you burnout, or are you just living in a system that wasn't designed for, I forget the exact wording, but basically wasn't designed for like humans to live in, and I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. Like, maybe it's not burnout. Maybe we're not all burnout. Maybe we're just all, we're all living in a system that wasn't designed to thrive.
Yeah.
Certainly thrive in, maybe not even really exist in.
Well, and then basing our worth on our ability to successfully navigate said system, which
Right.
therein lies, that's what I think creates the
Yeah.
burnout, I think, is that we're constantly striving for whatever,
Yeah.
validation or proof of our worth or whatever, in our productivity, in our ability to handle stress, and our ability to handle traumatic event. I mean, all the things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does have a cumulative effect on us as individuals, and also as, like, collectively, all of us. This our collective experience of life, it has that cumulative effect.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe that's part of where we are too, is not only, I'll say, requiring a willingness to be curious, but also I think we are at the place where collectively we are needing to turn back to some version of interconnected communal living, this recognition of our interconnectedness and greater relationships within community.
Mm.
Like, I don't know that it needs to be like this group and this group and this group. That's not what I
Right.
mean. But that sense of like, we really do all depend on each other and need each other. We're wired. We come hardwired to be in relationships with each other, more than just like one-on-one or small groups. Like, we really require to be part of a communal group. I think in order to be like healthy, thriving humans.
Yeah, and I think just kind of that restorative relationship with the earth too,
Mm,
with the
yeah.
natural world, meaning like nature and things like that. Just
Mhm,
just
mhm.
a restoration of that relationship that, um I don't know. I mean, I think there are things that get in the way of that. And so I think leaning more into that connectedness, because I think that is when we can feel connected to that, then we can begin to like feel connected. Because I think oftentimes it's easier to feel connected to nature than it is to maybe someone over there.
Yeah,
Right. And so I think once we kind of really practice looking for those connections, then it will show up. Then they will show up in ways we hadn't really seen before because we've created that practice. And so, I mean, honestly, it's like start where you can. Like start
right.
wherever it's easiest to sense that connectedness, start there
Yeah.
and begin to build that connectedness muscle, curiosity muscle, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like, read a book, go outside.
Roll
Jo
around in the dirt. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know, do
yeah.
something.
Right, go join a book club, I don't know, like, whatever the thing is, like, do something different? I don't know.
Even if it's just one thing, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it doesn't have to be. It's just I think we have this idea that we have to do great things. I just wanna do ordinary things actually and be happy.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't necessarily need to do great things. I just wanna do ordinary things, and I think that's the thing, right? It's like, it's just the ordinary things. I think
yeah,
just leaning into, seeing the ordinary things or things that we deem as ordinary and
yeah,
starting there.
yeah, and that is okay, that
Yes.
we don't all have to be, or need to be,
Nobel
maybe
Peace
even want to be, like, rich
Prize
and
folks,
famous,
yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah,
That's
it's
where
certainly.
I'm at.
Yeah. It certainly creates a new experience, doesn't it? Yeah. I'm a join you, or already have joined you. That's I'm at that place of it feels like a teetering, actually.
Yeah.
That's my final thought. Where I'm at feels like a teetering.
Swaying.
Sway. Yes. Gentle, sometimes violent swaying.
I think that's okay.
Yeah. And that's it too, right? Like where we are at
is okay.
Is okay. Because that's where we're at.
Yep.
And then we take the next step, and then that's where we're at. So no answers here, folks. I don't know. But hopefully this has been helpful in the sense that it kind of just gives some perspective or gives some insight into you are not alone in where you are at. That what you're going through is unique to you and also very common, and both of those things can be true at the same time. So thanks for tuning in to the In Between, where shift happens, and I trust between now and next time lots of shift will continue to happen, and so we will see you then at the In Between.
Nobody really enjoys being in the in-between.
But thanks for being here anyway.
We may not have found all the answers,
but certainly some. And maybe more importantly,
a little shift has happened.
And the beauty of it all is that we are not alone in the in-between.
So until next time, we hope a lot of shift happens.